intolerable circumstances. Brittney will soon be back in the arms of her loved ones, and she should have been there all along.
Well, breaking news this morning, two-time Olympian and Phoenix Mercury star Brittney Griner back on U.S. soil, or she's headed to U.S. soil. She is in U.S. custody after almost 10 months of being in Russian prison.
The president speaking live this morning to the public, confirming the news that it was a one-for-one prisoner swap in exchange for our Olympian, the international arms dealer Victor Bout. Still a lot of news playing out this morning, and so many efforts that we did not hear about that went into this. So team coverage continues for you this morning. Colton standing by with the latest, and we're checking in with a reporter from our Washington, D.C. bureau with more about what it took to get here. But we want to start out now with Tess, who has been tracking the latest.
Yeah, good morning, guys. It's certainly the story making headlines, not just here across Arizona, not just across the nation, but around the world. We can only imagine, right, the relief Brittney Griner and her loved ones are feeling this morning. The president releasing these photos earlier today showing that he was joined by Brittney's wife, Sherelle, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken as they spoke to Griner on the phone. The president tweeting, "She is safe. She is on a plane and on her way home." So here's what we know so far about this one-for-one swap. BG was released in exchange for international arms dealer Victor Bout. We know the agreement was negotiated in Moscow, and within the last week, the president gave final approval for this one-on-one swap. The actual exchange took place earlier today in the United Arab Emirates. So to secure Griner's release, the president ordered Victor Bout to be freed and returned to Russia. He signed off on the commutation order, cutting short his 25-year federal prison sentence. And he was being held on a slew of charges on conspiring to kill Americans, acquire and export anti-aircraft missiles, and provide material support to a terrorist organization. At this point, it's still unclear what exactly led to the breakthrough and to the final decision to release Griner. But President Biden saying it took months of hard work to get here.
This is a day we've worked toward for a long time. We never stopped pushing for her release. It took painstaking and intense negotiations, and I want to thank all the hard-working public servants across my administration who worked tirelessly to secure her release.
And as you know, Griner had been in a Russian penal colony after being found guilty on drug charges after she was found with cannabis vape cartridges in her luggage. That was in February in Moscow. So, as you can imagine, it's been a long 10 months as folks in Washington have been working to bring BG home. Colton joining us as we continue our team coverage on what's been going on behind the scenes to make this prison swap. Colton?
Yeah, Tessa, Representative Greg Stanton has been at the forefront of efforts to bring Griner home, helping get bipartisan legislation passed in Congress, pushing for her release. And he is joining us live this morning. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Just a reaction right now to this news that's not only making headlines here in the Valley, Arizona, but really across the world.
This is a beautiful day for Brittney Griner, a beautiful day for Brittney's wife, Sherelle, our friend, our fellow American who has unjustly spent almost 300 days in Russian custody, including recently in a penal colony. Our friend is coming home, and it's a beautiful day for her, her wife, Phoenix, all of Phoenicians, and all of America.
We know that you were at the forefront of bipartisan legislation to really help spearhead the effort to bring her back home. Tell us, how closely involved were you with these negotiations, if any, and also if you were part of the delegation who knew a week ago that the president was going to sign off on this?
Well, I'm not going to talk about anything that's classified, but here's what I will say. We did get Congress to pass in a bipartisan way an important resolution a few months ago saying that we needed Brittney Griner home, we demanded her release, and that we would support the president and this administration to do what it takes to bring Brittney Griner home. These decisions are not easy, but when you have a fellow American wrongly in custody, unjustly in custody, we need to do everything we can to bring our fellow Americans home. And obviously, we're going to continue to work to bring home Paul Whelan, another American that is unjustly in the prison system in Russia right now.
Yeah, exactly. With Paul Whelan coming up next, a lot of people wondering, oh, you know, he probably doesn't even know that he was left out of this because he's in a hospital now. What are the talks like right now in terms of that effort on getting him back?
Well, the key is that there are talks going on, that there is a horrific war going on with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Some thought that that meant that there could not be diplomacy between the United States and Russia during this time, and obviously that's not the case. We are able to continue to have these delicate discussions and negotiations to allow for prisoner exchanges. Those discussions, thank God for the leadership of UAE, who helped act as an intermediary to bring Brittney Griner home. Thank God that we still have the ability to have those conversations, even in light of this horrific war, so that we can continue to fight to bring our fellow Americans home. And we're not giving up. Look, Brittney Griner is a personal friend of mine because we got to know each other when I was mayor of Phoenix and a season ticket holder for the Mercury. And I'm just a big basketball fan and love to see her personal and professional development over the years. So for me personally, what an incredible day to see my friend released and on her way home to the United States of America. But we will not ever stop in the fight to bring all of our fellow Americans who are wrongfully detained in Russia and around the world. And this shows that American diplomacy works and can work well. And that's a great day for this country.
I do have one more question really quickly, Representative. In a lot of conversations now taking place about the swap for an international arms dealer known as Merchant of Death. A lot of people wondering what kind of precedent this will send, especially when it comes to those who are targeting Americans. Any comment on that and how this could play out in the future for future talks?
The resolution that we passed through the House, again, it was a bipartisan resolution, specifically authorized and supported the president to do what it takes to bring Brittney Griner home. We needed to show the president and this administration that Congress, representing the American people, had their back to make these tough decisions to bring our fellow American who was wrongfully detained home. So that's really the precedent that I say is to our Americans. Hope and pray that this never happens to any of our fellow Americans. But if it does, America will not forget you, and we will fight for you to bring you home. That's the precedent that I think is set today by this president, this administration. And I want to say one more thing. I've gotten to know Brittney's agent, Lindsay Colas, throughout this process. She's a hero. We should all be so lucky to have an advocate like Lindsay fighting for their client throughout this whole endeavor. And I just want to say how much I respect her and honor her today. And also Sherelle, Brittney's wife. She has acted with such dignity and grace and courage and strength throughout this horrific ordeal. And I just honor Sherelle today as well. What a beautiful day for Brittney and Sherelle.
All right, Representative, thank you so much for joining us on Good Morning Arizona this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Colton, thank you for that. Of course, there were a lot of different players around Washington also helping push for Griner's release.
So joining us to talk a little bit more about this is D.C. correspondent Molly Martinez. Molly, a lot to digest this morning, but it is just big news for Arizonans waking up to hear that the prisoner swap this time with Russia was for Phoenix Mercury star Brittney Griner.
Yes, this is a huge deal for Arizona. It's also a huge deal for the Biden administration. Once this arrest happened, as you mentioned, 10 months ago, so this has been the better part of a year, it's really been a pall over his administration. Every time there's a reporter questioning, Brittney Griner was brought up. So this was a constant reminder to Biden that this was something hanging over him. And he fought very hard to get her back. And today, the fruits of that labor are coming to fruition. But he, of course, did not do it by himself. There were plenty of people that also aided in bringing her home.
Hey, Molly, at the same time, there's a lot of criticism regarding this swap and the fact that ex-Marine Paul Whelan was not part of that. Is the president, do you think, aware of all of the criticism that he was not part of this deal?
I think the president is acutely aware, and he mentioned that today in the press conference with Sherelle sitting next to him. He said, you know, we're not going to rest until all Americans come home. And there is question of what sort of precedent this will send. Is this a fair trade? A celebrity in the United States for an arms dealer. And people are worried that this is going to incentivize more capture of Americans, more sort of flagrant arrests, so that they can have more political power when it comes to trades like this. Of course, that remains to be seen, but right now there's a really convivial mood of celebration at the White House.
And the circumstances of this, looking at the prisoner that the United States is passing back over to Russia, is similar to the transaction we saw earlier this year in April for Trevor Reed.
Yeah, that's true. And they're always, you know, since the Cold War, we've seen these kinds of swaps. And so this is the latest one and sort of a very high profile one. You know, she was a star, not just in Phoenix. She was an Olympian that everyone recognized. She really had a lot of star power. So this case brought a lot of weight with it. And of course, you mentioned Paul Whelan. He is still there. And he, you know, as I mentioned before, Biden says we're not going to forget about him either. It's all part of the process.
All right. Well, Molly, we appreciate your info this morning, and thank you.